Program Director, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Premiers, Dr. Adesina, President of the African Development Bank, captains of industry and leaders of business organizations, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome all of you to South Africa, those who have come from far and afield, and particularly to our 4th South African Investment Conference. We meet at a time when our country, like many other countries around the world, are facing huge challenges as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Yet it is also a moment of great opportunity and promise for development, for business building, and for restoring the lives of our people. For 2 years, our world has been battered by a pandemic far worse than any experienced in more than a century. Our economy, like so many around the world, has been severely damaged. Unemployment has risen, resulting in the loss of some 2 million jobs in South Africa. Businesses have closed and families across our nation have suffered great hardship. But it could have been far worse. Had we not acted swiftly to contain transmission and strengthen our health facilities, many more people would have gotten ill and many more lives would have been lost. Had we not introduced an unprecedented social and economic relief package, many more businesses would have closed and many more jobs would have been lost, and indeed many more people would have gone hungry. Not only did these measures provide vital and needed support to those most affected by the pandemic, they also established a foundation for the recovery of our economy. Due to the decline in COVID infections, also due to the decline in hospital admissions and deaths, and thanks to the levels of vaccination and people immunity, or herd immunity as they say, we have entered a new phase in the management of the pandemic. We've been able to remove almost all restrictions on the social and economic activity, enabling our people and our businesses to almost move back to pre-COVID days. We're learning to live, we're also learning to work and to build back and reconstruct with the virus in our midst. This 4th investment conference could not be taking place at a better time, just as the country is casting off the long shadow of the pandemic and embarking on a concerted and determined recovery. We are not unaware of the challenges our country faces, and there are many. We know that our challenges are huge, they are gigantic, they are also complex, and they are also protracted. But we are neither defined by these challenges, nor are we daunted by them. Rather, we are dedicated to surely, steadily, and decisively overcoming them. And I'm not here to pretend that these challenges are not real, because they are real. I'm also not here to downplay these challenges, but I am here to share with you about what has been done and what we are doing to meet the many challenges our country faces. I'm also here to say that the government of the Republic of South Africa is making progress along the difficult but necessary path of reform that we have embarked on some 3 years ago, that we are starting to see some of the results that we envisaged. Nowhere is this difficult path more apparent than in the one sphere that really determines the life of our people and the economy of our country, which is energy. No economy can operate without a reliable supply of electricity. That is why we have undertaken the most extensive transformation of our energy sector in nearly a century. In December last year, Eskom, our energy company, met its deadline of establishing a separate transmission entity and is set to complete the process of unbundling into separate entities for generation, transmission, and distribution by the end of this year. We are moving ahead to facilitate a competitive market for electricity generation and the establishment of an independent state-owned transmission company. We have a deficit of some 4,000 megawatts of energy supply due to the aging of our power stations and many other technical difficulties that they continue to experience. We are working with the private sector to fast-track investment to unlock a potential 4,000 of embedded generation. We have increased the licensing threshold for embedded generation projects from 1 megawatts to 100 megawatts, which has been widely welcomed by many in the business sector. Last year, we launched bid window 6 of our Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program. This is going to add new generation capacity to the grid over the next 2 years, mainly through wind and solar power. And so, even as the country continues to experience intermittent load shedding, we are moving with pace and determination to bring new generation capacity online in the shortest possible time. We're doing so while undertaking the far-reaching reforms that will secure a reliable and affordable and a sustainable supply of electricity well into the future. For South Africa's economy to realize its potential as a supplier of products, goods to markets across the world, it needs roads, railways, and ports that work. While we undertake a range of measures to improve operational performance, we are also implementing structural reforms to increase investment, introduce new technologies and skills, and improve efficiency in all our rail and port infrastructure. This is work that is underway. The establishment of the Transnet National Ports Authority as a separate entity may not, at first glance, seem particularly transformational, but it is a long overdue structural reform that will have a profound effect on investment in our ports infrastructure. Transnet will soon start the process of providing third-party access to the freight rail network, a development that will encourage more efficient use of some of our country's most valuable infrastructure assets. Last week, we concluded the first significant spectrum auction in close to 2 decades. I've been told by players in that field that the auction was run along world standard rules and processes, and they just give a great deal of accolades to the way our independent communications authority ran the process. They said world class. And that is a word I always want to hear, world-class. So I was very pleased. Now, this is going to unlock valuable spectrum for mobile communications that will have significant benefits for consumers, for businesses, for ordinary people, and will facilitate the development of broadband infrastructure across the country. And some of the conditionalities they have to meet is to reach out into the deep rural areas of our country, enable connectivity in the villages, in the very deep areas of our country. Soon we'll be completing the migration of our TV signal from analog to digital, unlocking much of our country's digital potential. It has taken a long time, but as they say, it's better late, a little late than never. So this is what is happening now. Our state-owned enterprises have been a huge drain on the fiscus over the years. Our reform process is aimed at bringing this to an end and making sure that our state-owned enterprises are profitable and they run properly. Like many other countries, we are transforming our entire approach to state-owned enterprises so that they are better able to fulfill their vital social as well as economic functions. We have revised our critical skills list, which will enable us to attract skilled professionals to work and to do business in South Africa. It is our ambition to be an economy and a society that is open to the global skills that attracts talent, expertise, and innovation to South Africa. We are establishing a special unit in the presidency to deal with bureaucratic red tape that impedes the operation of good business and to improve the operating environment and to reduce the cost of doing business. These reforms are not insignificant, nor are they just superficial. They are contributing to an economy that, despite the setbacks of the last 2 years, is developing and transforming and moving forward. We can see the signs of this everywhere. We see this in Postmansback, which is a small town in the Northern Cape, where the country's largest concentrated solar-powered plant is being built as part of our renewable energy independent power producers program. That's the part of the country where it is, they say, as hot as hell. And there is a town that is called Hot as Hell. We see it in the upgrades to the passenger terminal at our Durban Harbour as part of a public-private partnership with Transnet. It can be seen at the Toyota plant in KwaZulu-Natal, where the first hybrid vehicle produced in South Africa is being manufactured. It can be seen in Cape Town, where NANT SA vaccine manufacturing campus is being built. Dr. Song will be with us tonight, and he will tell us about his own origins and where he's been in the world and why he has come back home to South Africa to invest. It can be seen in Gqeberha, in the Eastern Cape, where the largest pharmaceutical manufacturing site in Africa, owned by Aspen Pharmacare, South African company, which is also partly owned by workers, is producing products for domestic consumption and export of a pharmaceutical nature. These are all the places where investment commitments that have been made and announced here at previous conferences are being realized, where plants are being built, where jobs are being created, and where production is underway. We are supporting these investments with a renewed focus on expanding the country's economic and social infrastructure. We've established the Infrastructure Fund with a 100 billion rand allocation from the fiscus over 10 years to leverage blended financing from private investors and multilateral development banks for infrastructure. We have prepared a pipeline of projects in water, in sanitation, in bridges, in energy, in transport, digital infrastructure, agriculture, agro-processing, as well as human settlements. Construction on a number of these catalytic projects is underway, and many of them will be commencing later this year. A presidential climate finance task team has been established to lead the mobilization of the funds for our just transition to a low-carbon economy. This will be headed by former Reserve Bank Deputy Governor Daniel Minele. This task team will lead engagements on the 131 billion rand Just Transition Partnership with the European Union, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States. This partnership will involve repurposing and repowering some of the coal plants that are reaching the end of their lives and creating new livelihoods for workers, for communities who are going to be most impacted by the change. All this work is part of the economic recovery, reconstruction and recovery plan that we put in place in October 2020 in response to the devastation to our economy by COVID-19. And it is aimed at driving growth, creating more jobs in the aftermath of the pandemic. The measures that form part of the plan underpin the social compact that we are building among social partners, and they being specifically business, labor, community, constituency, as well as government. This is a unique South African process where we sit down with all these key social players and craft agreements, and this time round we're seeking to craft a new consensus. A new consensus that will draw together the resources, the capabilities, and the efforts of all sections of society to achieve our common goal of a rapid and sustained recovery. We see this social compact in action through initiatives such as the Youth Employment Service, which is a collaboration between government and business to provide work experience and jobs to unemployed youth in our country, and there are many of them. We see it at work in the Presidential Employment Stimulus, which has provided job and livelihood opportunities for over 800,000 people in the 17 months since it was established in response to COVID-19. We see this social compact at work in our infrastructure program, in the several industries that have developed master plans to expand investment and production, and in our determined skills development programs. This is supported by a macroeconomic framework that is clear, that is stable, and that is prudent as well. We are working to steadily reduce our deficit and debt burden. And we are shifting public spending away from consumption and servicing our debt towards supporting capital investment, productive activity, yes, as well as social development. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, it is nearly 4 years since we embarked on the ambitious drive, as Minister Patel was saying, to raise 1.2 trillion rand in new investment over 5 years. Now, despite the impact of the pandemic, by the time of the third South African Investment Conference in 2020, we had raised and we had pledged a total of 774 billion rand in investment commitments. We are 2/3 of the way to reaching our target. Now, of the 774 billion committed, around 316 billion has so far been invested, and the rest is in the way of being processed. Of the 152 investment pledges, 45 projects have been completed. A further 57 are under construction. 15 have been put on hold in several cases due to the impact of the pandemic. The investments that have been realized since our first conference have created jobs, have increased localization, and have expanded local value chains. They have brought skills, they've also brought technology and know-how into our economy. Whether it is a young person employed in a data center, a worker at an auto plant, or a small business supplier to a renewable energy plant, these investments are impacting on the lives of a number of our people, and I wish it was all of our people, but there are always these limits. The chance to earn a decent livelihood is fundamental to the dignity and the worth of every human being. And it is these investments that are making the difference. Today, at this 4th South African Investment Conference, many companies, and represented by many of you here, will come forward to make new investment commitments. And we thank you for being here, and we thank you for having the investment determination to come forward and make those pledges. You will do so because you see opportunity in this country. You see beyond the difficulties and the challenges, and that is why you will come to this platform and make those pledges. You also see the reform process that is underway that is bearing fruit. You see an open society that has enabled us to weather many storms, and there have been many storms. You also see a strong and vibrant democracy, a diverse media, and an active civil society. These are enshrined also, their rights are also enshrined in our Constitution. But you also see durable institutions. You see, for you to invest, you see that there's an independent judiciary in our country and the rule of law. After a decade of state capture, you see a country that is confronting corruption and criminality, a country that is rebuilding its law enforcement agencies and strengthening the capacity of the state. You also see a well-regulated banking, financial and taxation system and a transparent budget process in operation in South Africa. As investors, you see a constitution that enshrines the rights of employers and employees alike, that advances the rights of the landless in our country, as it does those of property owners, that protects workers and businesses, and that prevents the arbitrary exercise of power. As we continue along this path of reconstruction and recovery, I call on all investors, entrepreneurs, and business people to be part of this journey, for we have embarked on a journey of reform, a journey of recovery, and a journey of rebuilding this country brick by brick, street by street, and infrastructure project by infrastructure project. As investors, you need to know that your investments are secure and that the operating environment in South Africa is stable, and that you are supported by policy certainty and regulatory safeguards that we are putting in place. You need to know that the measures that we are taking to tackle crime and the damage to infrastructure are having an effect. Your investments are making a difference in local economies and the lives of our people. We therefore invite you to be part of South Africa's growth story. We invite you to be part of a young, dynamic, resilient nation, positioning itself at the front and at the forefront of progress and change. We are forging ahead to transform our economy, to unlock our country's potential, and to create meaningful livelihoods for all our people. Along the way, yes, there will be challenges, there will be hurdles, but we are determined to overcome. And we are determined also to leave no one behind in South Africa. I therefore invite you, as you make your pledges today, to join us in this journey, a wonderful journey of rebuilding South Africa. Thank you very much.